Hello, my name is DC Cordova and I'm CEO of Accelerate Business Schools and the Money and You program. And today we're talking about miracles. And really, I feel like my life has been a miracle, but it wasn't always that way. I actually grew up in Chile until I was 12 years old. And then my family, my mother remarried and took my new stepdad took us to the United States. I went there when I was 12 and I had a pretty nice life. Until I was 18 years old, and I was getting ready to graduate from high school. And very, very sadly, this man, you fall in love when you're 18 years old, and my love then actually was killed in a car accident. And I didn't know it at the time that he passed away that I was pregnant. And about 4 months later, I had a miscarriage the day after his birthday. And it was just a terrible, terrible thing to happen to an 18-year-old. And I didn't realize it, but I got really stuck on that incident. And I really closed my heart to God. I was very angry with God. I actually told everybody that I became an atheist, that there was no such thing as a God. And it took about 8 years, and it's an interesting story because I became a workaholic. I love to work anyway, but what I did was I was going through college, and I was a cheerleader, I was a member of all these different committees, plus I had 3 jobs, and then I was going to school full time. So I just didn't want to have any feelings. I was so busy. And by the time I was 24, I was a very successful court reporter. First, I made very good money in being an interpreter as I went through school. Then I became a court reporter. And I was a very unhappy young girl at 24 years old. And through a series of incidents, I realized that I really needed to make a change in my life. And I considered that to be one of the first time that I actually experienced a miracle. Because up until then, my life, up until I was 18, my life was a regular life. And then I was so heartbroken, and I didn't realize how heartbroken I was because sometimes we just kind of stuff those feelings. But when I was 24, I started creating a very interesting life for myself that I didn't like. And I worked for the court systems in Los Angeles, and I was surrounded by judges and attorneys and clerks and policemen. And I worked in a place where it was the criminal courts building in downtown LA. And they actually had prisons, they had jails right there next to the courts. And I remember hearing those doors all the time. And I saw many different things that we don't have time to go through it. But my life really was like living in hell. It had everything. I was beautiful. I was 24. I was 25. I had money. I was healthy. I had a good family. But my heart was broken. And I decided, but I didn't know it. And I decided that I needed to move to a place that if I was going to be bummed out and if I was going to have a bad life, I might as well go to a far away exotic land. So I moved to Hawaii. I got a job there in 5 minutes because I was overqualified. I had the highest degree that you can get as a court reporter, and that is a certified shorthand reporter in the state of California, which you had to type almost 300 words per minute, literally perfectly. And so I got a job in 5 minutes to work for the court systems in Hawaii. And little did I know, but I was preparing for my second miracle, conscious miracle that you could call it. And that's when I became a sailing bum, and I was also being a court reporter. But I didn't like the job very much, so I quit, and I went to become a freelance court reporter. And still, those same feelings began to come back for me. And what I ended up doing was becoming a sailing bum. And I didn't know it, but for those of us who believe in the Great Spirit and in a higher power, I started noticing how beautiful the sun clips, that's the sunsets were, and the sunsides, that's the sunrise. We're students of Buckminster Fuller, and he taught us how to speak of these things correctly. And the ocean, and the whales, and the dolphins. I was surrounded by so much beauty. And one of the things the Hawaiians say, and other groups, spiritual groups say, that beauty heals. So all this beauty began to heal me. And so I started bubbling up and started having these feelings and these emotions, which I didn't know where they were coming from, but they were really coming from being surrounded by so much beauty. And I think my second miracle that I'm conscious of happened, and that is that I had this enlightenment experience that happened to me when I was 26 years old on the island of Kauai in a beautiful place called Hanalei Bay, which is stunning. It is, for those of you that ever wanted to go to Hawaii, go to Hanalei Bay. I mean, God is everywhere. And of course, I know that I'm speaking to the expectamiracle.com site, and I know that John Hinwood is a beautiful spiritual man with a wonderful family and a wonderful life, and I'm sure that he's shared with you different things that have happened to him. But I'm talking possibly to many Australians, and Australia is so stunning. It's so beautiful. I mean, I find Australia to be one of the most beautiful countries in the world. So I'm kind of speaking here to the choir. But I grew up in Chile, and it's a beautiful country. But I grew up in Los Angeles, and it's a wonderful place, but LA itself, unless you go to the beach and the mountains, it's just a one major city. So I wasn't used to that much beauty. So when I had my enlightenment experience in Hanalei Bay when I was 26 years old, and I was guided now. Now, you need to understand, remember, I thought I was an atheist, and this experience was so profound. And I'll share the experience very shortly. I was in this beautiful yacht with my wonderful boyfriend, Bob Moon was his name, and my roommate, Susie, had come into Kauai to spend a few days with us on the yacht. And it was high noon in September of 1976. And it was so beautiful, and we were looking at this place called the wettest spot on earth. It actually gets a little cloud on the top and sometimes rainbows, and it's just stunning. And I was looking at that spot. I was looking at Bob that was cleaning the boat. I looked at Susie, and all of a sudden my heart just opened up like I hadn't felt it since I was a child. And I had this experience where I felt like I was taken out of my body. And now, you have to remember, I was a party girl. I hadn't heard of anything spiritual except I grew up a Catholic. So I had no references, as Tony Robbins would say, for me to connect this to anything that had happened to me. And I had this experience almost like I was with God, and I saw everything. I saw creation. I saw the stars, but I also saw that everything up until then had a purpose. That the death of my boyfriend and the miscarriage of my baby, which happened, right after his birthday, and then later when I was 21, I had a second miscarriage, which also broke my heart. These horrible things that had happened to me and the death of other friends and loved ones had all had a purpose. And it was so stunning to me at that moment to feel that all these things that had closed down my heart, all these things that I had walked away from God, and I had walked away from all this beauty in the world, really had a purpose, and that I actually had a job to do.